Seats, we'll go ahead and proceed with our agenda today. As always, I'll read the items that are on our consent agenda. These are items that have either been administratively approved by the planning staff or have been approved by the planning department. And we will vote on these items as a consent package unless somebody desires to pull one of these items off for discussion. RS 2012-522, resolution sponsored by Duvall, Matthews, and others, exercises options to purchase real property for the Metropolitan Public Schools. There's a letter to approve this. It was administratively approved on 11/20, and Mr. Cooper, do we need to defer this so it tracks with the budget? The purchase of the school property. Okay. All right. Do I have a motion then to defer this by rule? All right. Motion made and seconded to defer RS 2012-522 by rule so that it tracks with the budget. All right. BL 2013-408. Sponsor is Moore, an ordinance to abandon alley number 1800. Administrative approval on February the 5th. BL 2013-424. Sponsor is Dow, Matthews, and others. An ordinance approving a lease between Metro and the state of Tennessee on behalf of Nashville State Community College. Administrative approval was given on April the 12th. BL 2013-425. Sponsor is Scott Davis, Claiborne, and Potts. An ordinance approving a license agreement to use Metro property for cross-access by HHKW Properties, LLC. Administratively approved on April the 5th. BL 2013-426. Sponsor is Todd, Potts, and Claiborne. An ordinance to abandon approximately 930 linear feet of existing 8-inch public sewer main and easements on Johnstone Court and Hobbs Road. Administrative approval on March the 12th. BL 2013-427, McGuire, Claiborne, and Potts sponsor, an ordinance to abandon a public utility and drainage easement within a portion of the former right-of-way of alley number 1706 and 2708 Worthen Avenue, administratively approved on March the 12th. BL 2013-428, sponsor is McGuire, Claiborne, and Potts, an ordinance to abandon approximately 115 linear feet of an existing 8-inch public sewer main and easements and to accept approximately 94 linear feet of 8-inch public sewer main at 1 Burton Hills Boulevard. Administrative approval given on March the 18th. BL 2013-429, sponsor is Tenpenny, Potts, and Claiborne, an ordinance to abandon approximately 85 linear feet of an existing 8-inch public sewer main and easements and to accept approximately 72 linear feet of an 8-inch public sewer main at 100 Foothill Court. Administrative approval on 3/16. BL 2013-430. Sponsor is Langster, an ordinance to abandon a portion of 28th Avenue North right-of-way. Administratively approved on April the 4th. Substitute Bill 2012-292, sponsor is Barry Stein and others, an ordinance amending sections 17.04.060 and 17.16.250 pertaining to recording studios as an accessory use in residential districts. This was approved by the Planning Commission by a vote of 7-4-0 or 1 against on November the 8th. And BL 2013-370, sponsor is Gilmore, an ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance by applying the Salemtown Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District to properties located along various streets in Salemtown. We actually gave approval to this at our meeting on March the 19th, so that's we don't actually have to vote on that. Are there any of these that need to be pulled? All right, 292 is pulled. Any others? Do I have a motion? All right, motion made. Do I have a second? Motion made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Okay, 2012-292, an ordinance amending sections of the zoning code pertaining to studio recordings and accessory uses in residential districts. Councilman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It might be, we're going to get a substitute of the substitute on this tomorrow. Maybe, and I know this is unusual to discuss this much in committee, but I know the Vice Mayor wants us to have as much debate as we can in the committees. So I do think it would be prudent now for those who want to speak to go ahead and start talking about this so people can, it's complicated, so people can start thinking through all of this. So I don't know if, Mr. Cooper, if it would help for you to kind of walk through the substitute that's going to be presented tomorrow night so we can all start thinking about it.
There's a second substitute ordinance that is in your packet that has been proposed. I'll just go through the changes between the first substitute and this new second substitute. It would add a requirement that a maximum of 4 vehicles could be on the property at any one time. It includes provisions regarding noise that mirror the general noise ordinance for the rest of metro government. So it incorporates those specific noise provisions into the bill. It adds a requirement that the operator of a home recording studio have a business tax license from the county clerk before operating. It adds a limitation of 25% of the total combined floor area of both the any accessory building and the main home structure. So you would take the combined square footage and the size of the studio could be up to 25% of that. It adds a requirement that an application be made to the zoning administrator to get a special permit for a home studio use. And finally, it adds a provision that the home studio permit could be revoked by the zoning administrator if 3 independent residents in the area make a complaint for violations of any of the restrictions in the bill. If the zoning administrator found those to be warranted, then he would have the authority to revoke the permit, which would be subject to appeal.
Councilman Todd.
Thank you, John. I guess, and again, I want to begin by saying I appreciate all the work that Council Member Berry has done on this, and it's a lot of work, and it's like peeling off layers of an onion. The more you start peeling off, the more you see how complicated this was, and I apologize to her because I think early on I told her I think I could be for this, but as my constituents have learned about this, it's almost unanimous in my district that they don't want to go with this bill. And I think we have to look at the current statutory regime for regulating home-based businesses, and it's working. There may be a complaint here or there, but in my 6 years on the council, I've never gotten a complaint from a neighbor about somebody else's home-based business. I've gotten complaints about the next-door neighbor's dog barking, yes, many times, but not about their business. And to me, if it's not broke, don't start screwing with it because you're going to. This is incredibly complicated. As you know, Megan's already had to come up with a substitute to the substitute. And I guarantee you, as we start walking through this, I'm going to point out a couple things that you'll see lots of other areas that need to be fixed that just don't make any sense. So the question is, do we move to a new regime to regulate home-based businesses, or do we stay with what we currently have? And I'll be the first to admit what we currently have is not perfect, but it's working. And if somebody wants to say it's not working, please show me some documented examples of where it's not working. But let's talk about the proposed new regime, the new scheme to regulate home-based businesses. It is discriminatory on its face. As a, you know, I can't believe we're going to single out one type of business and permit it, and then not allow any other type of business. So, and Mr. Cooper and I have had some discussions on this. I don't know if it's clear. I mean, it may be, clear whether or not this would withstand some kind of equal protection or due process challenge. I think that when the next bill comes along, and Council Member Emily Evans has already got a bill up on first reading to permit 3 more types of home-based businesses. So if this bill passes tomorrow night, I don't know how we're going to tell Council Lady Evans that her bill can't pass. And why are we doing this piecemeal? Why are we going to, let the big one in, and then when it comes time to start regulating everything else, it's kind of too late. And, you can make a list of all these things. There are beauticians and lawyers and bookkeepers and swim lessons, piano lessons. There's just tons of things. And Mike Jameson, who's one of the most respected people on the Metro Council, worked on this for a year. We had tons of debate, and we decided that the current system wasn't perfect, but it was better than what he was proposing. It was almost, I don't know if it was 25 to 10 or whatever on the council, but it was pretty much a clear vote on the council to stay with what we have. And just for lots of reasons. But let's specifically look at this bill a little bit, this new substitute. What it does, the statutory framework to regulate home-based businesses is contained in Section D. And that's been on the books, I don't know how long, John, but a number of years, and there are all kinds of protections to people. And again, like I said 2 weeks ago, most people in Nashville, their most valuable asset is their home. And they have mortgages, they're worried about their home payments, and if something goes in to cause their home price to go down, we as district council people are going to get really criticized for that. So this is so important that we get this right. So the framework for regulating home-based businesses is in Section D, and there are all kinds of things in there that protect the next-door neighbors. Like, for example, it says in here, if you have complicated electrical equipment, you cannot do it in a home-based business if it can be seen from outside the dwelling. That is important. With all the musical equipment, that wasn't picked up and put in the new Section E that's been drafted. There's also another provision in here that says you cannot have complicated electrical equipment in your home-based business if it interferes with your neighbor's radio, television, reception on neighboring properties. So, you put in a big home-based studio, and, I don't know what kind of internet requirements or things these have. If it screws up your Comcast service or whatever, you're protected under the current regime. You're not protected under the new regime. All of these things that are currently in paragraph D are not brought over into paragraph E, and which begs the question, why do we have a new paragraph E just for home recording studios? Why not put it in paragraph D with the existing home-based businesses? So it makes no sense to me. It's discriminatory on its face. As a lawyer for 30 years, that gives me serious pause. It makes me wonder that if we'll be able to have a legitimate debate on other types of home-based businesses when that comes down the pike. The other thing is, there aren't any definitions in this bill. It says, a key provision in the current statute is that a home-based business cannot be any larger than 20% of the square footage of the house, or 500 square feet. The 500 square feet was kind of a ceiling to protect next-door neighbors. That's gone now. In the new bill, that's gone. So as houses get bigger and bigger, 3,000 square feet, 4,000 square feet, and it's inched up from 20% to 25% under her bill. So you could have 1,000 square foot business next door to you in a 4,000 square foot home. And what is the business? And I was talking to someone today actually in favor of the bill, and he was real excited about it. He said, this is great because this 1,000-foot limitation only applies to the technical control booth. So if you've been in a recording studio, the control booth is where all the equipment is, where the producer sits. The musicians are out, maybe in the living room or the bedroom. So, it could be the whole house if the control booth is just what's measured as the 1,000 square feet. So, that gives me some concern. The other thing that bothers me is when this bill got through the Planning Commission, it had the 500 square foot cap in there. I'm not sure the Planning Commission would approve this now in the form it's in. And again, the other thing that just bothers me about this is we're eroding this law that we have for one type of business And I don't think we'll be able to have a legitimate debate on a home-based business bill down the road because we've already made a huge exception here. It's discriminatory and it's kind of piecemeal legislation at its worst. And I thought it'd be good to get that out now so we could start talking about it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Council Lady Bennett.
Thank you, Chairman Claiborne. Mr. Cooper, I may have missed it, and I apologize if you did cover this. Isn't there a change in this second substitute about the number of cars? Can you expound on that?
There would be a maximum of 4 vehicles on the property at any one time. So your driveway requirements, your off-street parking, would mirror the Title 16 of the code, which says you can't have more than 25% of your lot covered with a paved or graveled surface. So on that portion, you could have no more than 4 vehicles at a time.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Glover.
I have to, I guess, express my concern because I went back and talked with the homeowners associations in my district. They're emphatic, no. In fact, they're pretty emphatic about no to any type of business. They certainly were very much so against the 8-car rule. I think dropping it to 4 cars isn't going to satisfy them. So for that being said, I won't be able to be in favor of this because I just don't feel like my neighborhood associations are in favor of doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Holloman.
Thank you. I have not seen this amendment until it was filed, but I do have a couple questions for Mr. Cooper. In paragraph D, which I think is new language about revocation of the permit, it seems to me actually this is less stringent. I mean, right now, if I complain and there's a violation, then you can be revoked if there's one valid complaint. Isn't that correct?
Yes, and this doesn't change that. I mean, if the zoning administrator and the codes department still wanted to pursue the environmental court route, they could do that by issuing a citation. This just offers an alternative revocation
When would you
mechanism.
ever choose this route?
I don't know. This language was taken from the Jameson bill from last term that was prepared by the planning department.
I mean, I'm concerned, frankly, that there's less ability to enforce instead of more ability to enforce with that. And then also, I wonder, it just says it's revoked, but it doesn't say I can't go right back down there and apply to the zoning administrator the next day and get another permit. Is that true?
That's true, but the zoning administrator, I mean, if
well, I don't see any discretion from the zoning administrator, I guess is where I'm going with that. It just says, and has approved the proposed home recording studio as complying with the provisions of 1716-250E.
Right. I mean, there's nothing, you're correct, there's nothing in the bill that would provide any discretion.
Okay. So I just want to say to my colleagues that I think that alone is pretty problematic, that if I were to complain because of valid complaints and 2 other people complained because of valid complaints, then maybe it would be revoked, but then I could go right back down and just re-up the next day. So I don't think that our neighbors are very protected as a result of that. And then I would like to hear from the sponsor why the limitation of the 500 square foot cap was removed. I do have some concern about that. I know in particular in the Hillsborough West End neighborhood, which is not my district, but I've heard from some people that made this specific complaint that you have a lot of situations where, particularly when we allow it an accessory dwelling, if you have a large home already, you may have a very large studio that's allowed if it's 25% with no 500 square foot maximum. So, Councilor Lady Berry, could you explain to us why you removed that? I mean, it looked like you were trying to sort of ratchet it down to alleviate some of the concerns, but that frankly opens it up a lot more.
Thank you, Councilman Holloman. Actually, it was done to address some of the concerns. Thank you.
Well, weren't there concerns about size of the studio?
On both sides, wanting to make sure that the studio was proportional to the house and also then protecting neighborhoods to make sure that it wasn't bigger than 25%.
Okay, but you'd agree now that if you have a 5,000 square foot home, you can have a 1,250 square foot studio?
This would allow for that, yes.
And previously it could have been 500 only?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I urge the committee to vote no.
Any other questions, comments? Councilman Westerholm.
Thank you, Chair. And if the planning, I was just kind of a question for the planning department. Was there any discussion of this? I believe that the vote was in support by the commission. Was there any conversation or dialogue you could share with us that would allow us to think through why the planning commission was overall very supportive of this?
There wasn't a long discussion at this past time. This was before the commission. I mean, I think some of the rationale behind it was that a lot of these businesses are already operating in the neighborhoods, and this would just address what's already happening, number one. Number two, it's consistent with what the land use policies and what the planning department goals are for having a more diverse economy and the changing way that people are working today, more people working from home. So I think that was their basic rationale for it.
Thank you.
I could, as your representative on the Planning Commission, tell you that the bill was originally on the consent agenda for the Planning Commission. And I'm the one who requested it be pulled off for discussion. And there was virtually no discussion other than the comments that I made. And the vote was called for, and so it was a fairly quick process. Councilman Gilmore.
Yes, could you share with us, that's fine. Mr. Chair, could you share with us your comments that you had at the?
I made the comments that, we had considered this in the council on a larger scale in the last council session with Councilman Jamison's bill. And that there were multiple neighborhood meetings that had been held where he engaged with neighborhood people to try to address their concerns, answer their questions, and that ultimately the neighborhoods had said no. And the council voted overwhelmingly to defeat his bill. And my point was that this had been brought forward basically under the radar, that there were virtually no neighborhood meetings in which Council Lady Berry attended to address questions, to answer questions or concerns, and that I thought it was probably premature to move ahead with approving something for one industry that excluded all others that we had talked about previously. And that was the basis for my comments at that time, but the other commissioners didn't feel that there was any need to discuss that further.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we go to vote, I wanted to see if Council Member Berry had any more comments before. No? Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Westerholm, do you have any other comments? Okay. Anyone else? Are we ready for the vote then? All right, those in favor of BL 2013 292, the substitute, those in favor, raise your hand. 6. And those not in favor, raise your hand. 3. And the chair votes no. So 6-4 to approve. Are there any other items that need to be discussed? Then we stand adjourned. Thank you.